back, everyone, to the Culture of Podcast. It's been a little minute, had some weather issues. We are in New York, so we had about 17 blizzards, and I was just messing with the schedule, but like I said, we are back, okay? Good. So, just as a reminder, this is the time where you like, share, subscribe, do all of those things.
Yeah.
To YouTube, it matters, to Spotify, to iTunes. Leave us a 5-star review. We will remind you, but do it now. Just get it out of the way. Let us know what you want us to talk about next. We are here for y'all. Okay? Now, who are we? Well, I am Gary J. Nix, your co-host, who's here all the time, gives you the open. And then I throw it to my illustrious co-host right over there.
Amber Shinevert, PhD, culture extraordinaire.
Yes. And today we are here with a guest, our second guest on the podcast. And I wrote down notes because I didn't want to mess up this intro, okay? So, who is our guest? She is an ACD at VML. She is a mentor in this industry. She is a creative, a dancer, someone who understands how culture impacts everything that we do, a friend of the pod. And as its hosts, we have to my left, we have Daniela Rosario.
Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be here today. Very excited, and she's now a CD, y'all.
Hey now. Congratulations.
So we're really trying to push, elevate, lift as we climb, all in all.
Yeah.
So love that for me. Love that for us.
Love that for us.
Happy to be here.
Yes, congrats.
Very excited. Thank you.
Yes, of course, of course. So what brings us here today? Well, this is where we go to rising above the noise. And today we are talking about the culture of subcultures. Okay? So I want to get just a little bit more from Danny about what you think about subculture. What does it mean to you, and how does it feed your work?
Ooh, so one on like a personal level, I think it's really interesting when we think about subcultures. Like, I have found myself in many subcultures, and you think about it, right? So I'll give you an example. So for me, I am Puerto Rican, not Puerto Rican, but I consider myself a Latinidad, right? So that is one big umbrella. But something I really, really love to do is I love to dance salsa. And in New York City, we have a really big salsa community. So that becomes a subculture of being part of Latinidad, right? So we think about how dance and music and all of those little things all culminate to kind of the experience of what it means to be, Latino, Latina. And so when I think about just my everyday life, like, subcultures are literally where I get my be-all, end-all of everything. That is my personality. How that ultimately, I think, translate and impact work right now, especially as I, lead a lot more social teams. Social right now, there is so much subculture that exists online.
Yeah.
Like, there are forums, there are Reddit threads, now there are little niche communities for everything, and being able to speak to those things and create work that people can tap into and feel seen, right, and vice versa, and connected. It's really helpful to, I think, push work and push ideas and speak to the people who you really want to be speaking with, which I think personally is like a hard thing to do, especially from like a business POV. But that's just my thoughts.
Yes. I definitely understand the challenge of wanting to speak to people that you want to speak to, particularly in the context of this subculture place, because it's not just Danny speaking, it's the brand that's speaking.
Right.
And where Danny might have a place, does the brand have a place? So that's like one of our questions. And then also leads us to the tension,
Yes.
right? Because, we strategists, we love attention.
I love strategists, by the way. Shout out to all my strategist people. I love you.
Thank you.
Always
Because sometimes,
creative strategist.
we don't get, but it's cool. But from a tension standpoint, the thing that we know when it comes to culture and then subcultures is that with subculture comes language, ritual, activity, experiences that shape what that subculture is going to be, who's invited, who can belong, who can create within that subculture.
Absolutely.
But as I was alluding to before, the tricky part with brands is, they're wanting to be a part of and support these spaces because they find them inspiring. They find them creative. There's potentially a little bit of that edge going on because perhaps tapping in is all about being the first or on the fringe of something or the edge of something. And brands really want to ride that wave of cool, if you will.
Right.
But the question is, and the tension becomes, but is that a brand's place?
In my opinion, I think that it's all about one intentionality, right? And like what is your goal going into that? I also think that we have to balance it with a little bit of how are you showing up for the community, right? Like, are you going in and inserting yourself into the community, or can you use your brand to uplift the community and bring more spotlight to it, right? I think that comes with tact. I think that comes with strategy, right? Like, I think that's when it's really important. I know for us right now, especially in a social media setting, is that there are influencers, there are creators who are in these spaces who have great ideas, who are smart and who are hungry, and who just lack the spotlight to really voice their opinion and what they're ultimately doing. And I think that's where a brand can fit into subcultures and niche cultures like that, where they really bring in a spotlight versus, hey, I'm going to come in here and tap dance. It says, no, I'm going to clear the floor so you can tap dance. Those are two different approaches in how I think a big brand or just big, little, any brand can tap into a culture that's not necessarily inherently a part of their brand identity.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that we talk about, and definitely I'll talk about, just because I can have a little bit more bandwidth being independent, and I can kind of just let my words go a little bit further.
Yeah.
I'm not going to promise that I'm not going to do that too much today, but I'm going to try. But I do want to say that it's important for these brands, especially these large ones.
Yeah.
But really, as you said, any brand that's trying to understand culture itself and try to lean into cultural literacy and fluency is that brands cannot manufacture the type of meaning that culture creates.
Absolutely.
Now, I would put that on a shirt, but it's a little bit too long. But it does go back to one of my shirts that does say, brands don't create culture, people do. Right? And I think that what you were talking about is really how to execute against being a part of the culture versus trying to leverage or own it. I will never forget when an agency said, we need to learn how to own culture. The way that I wanted to throw my computer, because this happened during the pandemic when I heard this first. And I would have flipped the table if I was there.
Right.
I know I would have.
Pause for just a second. I just want to plug. That is a part of the culture of belief systems.
Yes.
Session that we did. So please go back and look at that for more details because we went in. But please continue, Gary.
Yes. Because also, I mean, I don't want to go all the way into the culture of appropriation because we did that also. But we want to just kind of focus on.
We can always go back there.
Well, but that's also up. That episode is also available. But I think the key is to understand, as you said, where you fit, because that's also just a cultural norm.
Right.
Like if you as a person are attempting to enter a new space, do you try to just go in and just say, oh, this is mine, I run this? Or do you try to understand what's happening and see where you fit?
Well, see, I was also going to say, Danny, what I heard from you is the importance of partnership. I think a lot of brands, and I had not really thought about it this way until you said it just now, but I think a lot of brands don't necessarily consider their opportunity to support and mentor these particular communities, particularly those influencers who have a lot of reach,
Right.
who have a lot of influence, but maybe haven't necessarily had the opportunity to benefit as much from their influence, to also be able to serve not only as a guide, but also the brand can bring resources and support, not just to the subculture at large, but also to the individuals who hold it up and support it. I think that it's underestimated. I think that brands can really be a support, can be can give a stage, can invest, and really help structure partnerships, and that helps the community really learn how to protect their creation and what they've done, as well as really be able to do partnerships that are both beneficial to the brand and also to the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, what I've learned, so it's funny, just like when we think about the intersection, like, when we bring up AI and things of that, I know, I have to. But it's funny, right? I think as we progress more in a creative field and we think about subcultures and intersecting in that, I think that people forget that people like humans, right? Like, you ever get on a call and you're like, oh my God, like, I want to speak to somebody. I just want to speak to somebody. Yeah. That is very much, I think, where social is still at. There is a bit of an AI fatigue. And I think that working with creators and or influencers who are already within those subcultures is a great way to bring it back to subcultures and back to human. So I think that there is still such a big market for people who are influencers and are creators to bring us into those subcultures and bring us into their world. And for me as a creative lead, I think it's important that, to your point, I partner with those folks and I tell them, hey, I'm here to just, hey, you want a sounding board? I want to make sure that, you bring me all of you and I bring you all of the brand and we meet somewhere in the middle, right? We can work through, how to best still be you and still keep the integrity of who you are and what you're saying. And how can we marry it with a brand that is natural, authentic, and not in your face, like this is an ad or, this is, we want you to buy something. Sometimes it's just about tapping in a way that's correct and authentic and that people understand and believe. People just want to see themselves. At the end of the day, people just want to feel seen and heard. And I really believe in that at its core. Truly.
Yeah, there's an entire creator economy. We talk about it in this industry. The trades talk about it. The trades have sections that are just dedicated to this. Right. We talk about the growth of the creator economy and all these things. And yes, it's about creativity because we understand that's the storytelling, that's the connective piece, right? And then when it comes to the investment part, because business, we need ROI. Well, did you make a good investment? Did you let the money that you spent do what it's supposed to do, or did you try to run the money? If you are trading stocks, do you think you can control those?
Woo, that is a word. I'm gonna put that one on a shirt. No, truly, and that is such a poignant point that you're making, and I think that folks don't see it that way. It's like, oh, well, where's my return on investment? Baby, you just being in the space, you supporting this person is the return on investment, right? And then you have to build it. You have to workshop it. You have to be able to pour into it, not just a one time, right? Because that's very surface level. Yeah, performative, surface level. Like, it's not true. But to your point, the ROI is that continued investment in that community, that person, that creator, that entity that may be a little fringe for you, but is ultimately inherently important to the brand.
And I hear what you're saying. I think another thing that we also have to do, particularly from a strategy perspective, is to make sure that those like key performance indicators, those KPIs, are very much aligned to what's possible, right? And if there's a disconnect between the KPIs that are possible versus the outcome or the KPI the client expects, then that's a problem.
Right.
Like that's definitely something we have to deal with in the upfront, because it could be a conversation that's like, okay, we have this short-term goal for Q2, Q3 that we have to hit, right? So, okay, perhaps like this engaging in this subculture to try to hit that Q2 goal is not what's going to be it, right? This becomes a long-term investment. This becomes a 2027 play, because we're going to spend the balance of 2026 making sure we plan, we've got the strategy, we've got the media behind it, we've got the support internally, we've got everybody on the same page, then we can go forth. But when we try to make a long-term relationship into a short-term goal, and that you haven't even built that relationship yet, that ain't gonna be it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so many more business people need to understand that while your ledger sheet talks about transactions, that's not how you make money. You make money through relationships.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if it's short term or long term. You have to build a relationship, because a transaction lasts that long. And then you're chasing more money again, and you're spending more money. And I want to shout out the creators. As someone who used to be on the large agency side of things, even small agency, independent agency, holding company agencies, here is one place where agency folk and creators, aka influencers, can stand together based off of experience. When a brand tries to tell a creator what the message needs to be, yet they are looking at this creator because of the audience that they have and they want to tap in with them, they need to stop talking for a second. Because if you are spending money to tell people what to do, and you've already identified that you don't know exactly what you do, which is why you are contacting this company, this creator, whatever the case may be, I'm not bitter. I'm just saying.
Right.
Let's make sense out of this so we can make these dollars, can't we?
Right. I think that's so interesting. I've learned as just a creative in general is that there's so much I know, but there's so much I don't know. And it's okay to say that, no, that's just not my thing. I don't know. Y'all really know what this is. And maybe I don't see it and I don't get it, but let's put it to the universe. Let's put it out there and let the people decide. Let other folks chime in. Like, I think that there's so much merit in acknowledging that I don't know what I don't know. And maybe I don't get it, but let's put it out there and let's learn and trial and error. I think when it's easy to do that with certain formats. Like I would say like social, I talk about social because that is where I'm like eat, sleep, breathing right now. But I feel like that is a great place. Like, hey, listen, we could put worst case, we take it down, right? Like we can take it down, but I think allowing the to create, I think we need to create the playground in which we can test those things. If we have like clients who are scared of hey, I don't really get this, but maybe it's not for me to get, and create the playground for us to do experimental work and, outreach to those communities and finding better ways to do that. But I agree with you.
Yeah, there's something to be said about a test and learn mentality.
I love a sandbox.
Right. I mean, a test and learn mentality from a brand perspective gives you room to create, to get in market, to get things going, because we know that our clients in particular, no matter how big their brand is or how big their company is, they're under pressure for results, especially now when some of that can be so few and far between. It's like a game of inches right now, right? But like the test and learn approach gives you some freedom to try certain things in certain markets, or to start out, and particularly with social and anything digital, it's like in and out, up and down, immediate data and feedback on what it is.
I love
right?
some qualitative data.
Yeah. So you get some immediate feedback. And I think to a certain extent, clients can be afraid of that because they worry about doing the wrong thing and having it go out and then it blowing up their brand. But to your point earlier, Gary, if you are deciding that you're not going to necessarily dictate, but you're going to partner, I think you have a better chance of doing well, or at least not pissing people off.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I was just at Campaign Convene, and because they had they used Slido to field questions, I think that was one of those things where people felt a little bit easier to ask questions, but so many of those questions were based off of fear. And I do get it. Like, I know sometimes I specifically can come off a little bit too hard on brands. That's just kind of experience, but it's built in some frustration about the fact that they need to remember that we're here to help. Like, we actually all do have the same goal here. The fact is, we know that sometimes there's certain steps that you have to actually take before you can get to that larger goal. And the best engagements or relationships that I've had with brands, whether it's through my company or any of the agencies where I've been, we've had the floor open to have those conversations in a real way, right? So there's also just a cultural norm happening there if you're able to have these real types of conversations, right? If you're looking for growth, okay, then it's a new audience. Do you understand them, or do you just want their money? And from a client standpoint, if you're just going after their money, they don't want to work with you. So what makes you think that a person would just want to give you their money if that's all you want from them? You know, there's all these things that are coming from understanding what your brand is, what it stands for, why it exists, and who it resonates with, that we do talk about at conferences and in the trades and everything, but sometimes our actions just don't match, and it's just like we have to remember the steps to get there. Impatience, fear, all natural human emotions, feelings, etc. But we also know intelligently that we have to make these steps to go on. But I also don't want to go too far away from subculture because we just got to brand kind of, which is what we do. So, you know, I'm not mad at it, but, you know.
I think that like what you brought up was just really interesting, which I think as I'll bring us back to subcultures. But I think full circle, like I think when we are crafting for subculture, I think what happens is that I can speak for like a corporate setting or just, I feel like sometimes, especially like I know I've had to unlearn, like when I go into a briefing or I look at a problem, I'm like, I am a creative. I need to problem solve versus where do I reside in this brief, right? Is there a part of me? Is there a human truth that exists within this brief that aligns to who I am? And I think we do a lot of separating ourselves, our personal selves, when we go into a professional setting, that we forget that we are the subculture. And so learning how to tie it back, I worked with this young girl at an agency, and we were, you know, thinking on big ideas, and she was an intern, and we had thought for some time, and, you know, she's like, I just want a good idea. I want a good idea. And so we went back, we looked at the brief, and I was like, baby girl, I'm like, tell me about you. Now that we looked at this brief, let's throw it away. Now tell me a little bit about yourself. And as we spoke, we got to the bottom. I'm like, so much of your identity and who you are, that subculture that you exist in, is actually aligned to this brief. Did you think about that? Did you think about where you intersect with what's happening here? And just in that conversation of being able to pull back all the layers of professionalism and whatever that loaded word means, and what is right and wrong, and what you should talk about and not. And when we were able to peel those back and talk about human truths and her human truths, we're able to birth like an incredible idea. And I think that is an essential part in when we talk about subcultures, is understanding that we exist and that our personal identity outside of what we do exists in those subcultures, and how and when it feels okay and right to tap into those to ultimately sell work and great ideas. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring it back to subcultures. With, like, I see there's a lot of overlap there in just being truth and owning it, you know?
I think that's a really great point. And I think that the thing to consider also is where you might feel that connection, or you might see your place even adjacent to that community. I think with some of our clients that we might work with, there could be a fear because they don't see themselves in it. But some of that is because they can do an exercise on what culture means to them and their community. So that could be pickleball every Sunday with the community, or golf, or we're making brunch at the house for the family, or we do some other kind of activity or sort of language at home kind of thing. So even if you're not a part of the subculture, what we want to help clients do, and we want to help ourselves do, is have that empathy.
Yes. Yes.
I, don't have any brothers, but I have a sister, so at least some sibling stuff, I kind of get that, and it's simple things like that. It brings out that humanity. And I think that was some of what you were discussing.
Yeah. And it's just, it's perfect about how being able to see yourself or being able to transfer yourself into a separate situation, right? Because figuring out the problem solving part, I'm just going back to strategy again because I can't help myself. So much of that is where the creativity can be born from, right? It's like, where do I fit, and how does this affect me, whether I am that audience or not? What kind of thing am I looking for, even though this thing might not be specifically for me? I had to learn that as a DJ.
True.
Ooh,
wow.
Draw that connection.
Yeah.
Draw that connection.
So
right.
I learned how to be a better DJ as soon as I learned how not to play for myself, but how to play for the crowd.
I like that.
Now, generally speaking, it's part of the reason why I got out of it for a while at some point, because the balance of playing songs that I specifically didn't like or I didn't find to be fun was more than the songs that I did like. So that was really more of a timing issue. And I was before the point where you could really just go super niche with the parties.
It was the 16th time of Suavemente, right?
I was about to ask for an example song that was like...
No, it wasn't that. But when Suavemente came out, I worked in a record store in the Bronx.
Oh, wow.
So, and we sold mostly to DJs. So I heard that song at least 4 billion times a day, whether it was inside the store or outside on the street.
Right.
Right. But I mean, that's a beloved song. So I'm not. This is no shade.
It's
to the
like
song.
an anthem.
It is, But I mean, song's great. But I mean, anything you get sick of after a while. Right. There's some of my favorite songs I had to stay away from for years because I was like, I've heard this in college. Murder, She Wrote. was played 4 times a party.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, if I don't hear this song for another 15 years, I'll be fine. Just because I've heard it so much. It's like, it's nothing against the song. It's just enough already.
Yeah.
But off that tangent for a minute. But once again, if you are doing things for other people, you have to make sure that you are doing things that resonate with them. It can't just resonate with you. But if you're building things, you can understand how this thing may not resonate with you, but use that information to understand how it resonates for someone else.
Yeah.
Because that's what I had to learn as a DJ. And that's why record companies were actually asking me what I thought about things, because I wouldn't just tell them what I thought about it.
Yes.
Or I wouldn't just tell them, oh yeah, it's nice because I know something else is coming down the pipeline.
Right.
I could be like, I don't like this, but it could work here.
Yes.
Right.
Or I like this, but it won't work. Or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone can still blame me for Raise the Roof. Because that is literally my fault. It's documented that I told the record label to go with that song. And the rest is history.
Thank you so much for that. In every mainstream club or bar that I've been to, I feel like I've heard that at least once.
And sporting events, especially. Sporting
Yes,
events.
yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But that did so much for that artist because they probably still eat off of that.
True.
Oh, obviously.
Go ahead.
No, you know what I think? Okay, so this is a funny reference, but I've been very, very lucky to work with people in different work settings who are completely opposite than me. Like I worked, very closely with like all different walks of life, but I spend a lot of time communicating and building relationships with the people I work with closely, because we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room that we have different lives. We walk from different spaces. We have completely different POVs. But there was this one time I had a partner and we were talking and I was like, hey, you ever seen the movie Head of State? Have you guys seen Head of State?
Yeah.
Okay. So when Chris Rock, he brings Bernie Mac in as his running mate, and Bernie Mac is he's doing an interview, and he's and they ask Bernie Mac, what's your thoughts on NATO? He's like, NATO? I don't know about no NATO. You know Nato Jenkins? And he goes, no, I don't know Nato Jenkins. He goes, that's right, you don't know Nato Jenkins. I don't talk about people I don't know. And so I sent him this movie clip. And he wrote back to me and he laughed and so that would be our flag for each other when we would say, hey, like you don't really know what you're talking about, or this is not my space to jump in. So that would be our sign. And he'll ask me something, I'll be like, NATO? He'd be like, okay, cool. I was like, you don't know NATO, okay? And so. Right. But I think acknowledging where your limitations are is so important. Like, I don't know Nato Jenkins, and just be okay. You don't know Nato Jenkins. But I think it's so powerful to say, that's just not my experience. I don't know. And you know what? I trust you. One, it does many things on the team, like empowering the people around you to trust their creative gut, to trust their instincts, their cultural instincts. And that's how we make better like juniors, mid-levels, or whatever that is, or just creatives in general. To empower them to lead when sometimes everyone else is going to not see it. And that one person who lives and breathes and experiences that culture can really push forward. So, yeah, I think that's really important.
Oh, for sure. It's absolutely imperative that we know what we do know and what we don't know.
Yep.
So that we don't, just knowing that can avoid so many mistakes.
I don't know Nato Jenkins. You won't be able to hear Nato ever the same again.
I think, yes. Like, I think we definitely have to trust ourselves. I think one of the challenges that I've seen working with clients, particularly if it's a new audience, and even, some team members, and, people mean well. But what can happen is you can get somebody so immersed in a group. Like somebody like me, I know as a strategist, if I'm diving into a new audience, a new culture, and I'm trying to set the stage for the creative team or for clients to get a sense of this audience, what's important to them, what they care about in culture, sometimes there can be some arrogance after, because I'll do a good job, right? I do a good job. But I'm like, we had one day of a session where we're talking about people who have existed in this particular subculture or in their body for like 50 years or something like that. Or there's that much history of whatever it is. And, or even more. And so people could leave the situation like, I got it. And I'm like, wait, do you?
Right.
Because that's also where stereotypes can live.
Yes.
Because you could give new information, but if you just fall back on a nugget versus more of a broad understanding, then you also have an opportunity to make a mistake.
For sure.
And I think the way that particularly in the U.S., different populations and groups are evolving so fast and getting more and more interconnected. And I think it can cause some people whiplash who are missing a time where there was that one-to-many communication. I don't have to do all this individual talk. However, having those immersion sessions are still important because it helps people to step outside their comfort zone, to tap into that empathy. But I do think sometimes people can get into those immersions and think, oh man, I know everything about Mexican American skateboarders in Houston, Texas, right? Like, you're like, wait, no, pause.
Right. And I think that that's exactly what makes everything that we're talking about or everything that we do much longer than a moment.
Yeah.
Because the key is to understand that things do change. It's interesting the balance of how things change and stay the same at the same time. Because even a lot of the changes still come from a lot of just of the either the old experiences or the old approaches or just old ways of doing things that have just evolved. But to your point, Amber, about feeling like, okay, I've done all this immersion in this moment, and now you're in this rabbit hole where you're just like, okay, now I know everything because you found that one thing, but now you've forgotten everything else that surrounds that one thing that also matters. You know, so it is low-key part of the fun of the business. You know, even from a thinking standpoint or from a creative execution standpoint, this is where we actually get to play.
Right.
Which makes this industry, I think, very interesting for people.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yes, we want to do this until sometimes they find out how hard it is.
Oh,
because it's not just make something look nice.
You know what's so funny? It's funny you say that. It's like me, I'm as a creative and art direction specifically, right? I always tell my team, I'm like, that's cute. We can't just have a cute picture in a line anymore. It needs to be connected to something bigger. There needs to be tension. We need to be solving for tension. Like, we need to make sure that we're pushing. It needs to be deeper than that now, especially now because one, people are I love it. I think people are very critical, sometimes too much, but I do think that people are talking about the things you're doing, the things you're putting out there. And we need to be prepared for what that looks like and how we ultimately are doing things authentically that feels right to us, you know?
For sure. Yeah. I just had a student going through a portfolio exercise. And they kept trying to show me their stuff. And I wanted to see it. But I had to keep reminding them, but why? But why? Like, why do you think this will work? And even further, if you just show this, because it does look great, but if the person who you're trying to get a job from is looking at this and they have a completely different vision, and you can't tell them why this matters, it doesn't matter how good this looks.
Right.
Because it's not even going to look good to them.
Nope.
Because they don't know NATO.
Right, they don't know. I'm telling you, they don't know NATO.
Brought it back.
Truly. And that's my big thing is it needs to make sense to me. Like there needs to be, I love some cultural tension. That's why I love strategists. I'm telling you, no, I truly, especially as a creative, like I'm only as good as you. And our job is to sharpen each other, right? Iron sharpens iron. And I can't put forward a good creative. It doesn't have good strategy. Personally, I'm not going to do it because I can't go to, a business lead and be like, yeah, we did it because it looks pretty. Like, no, that's embarrassing. Like, no, this is how it's going to tie into, business at the bottom line. This is how whatever that's going to look like. I think for social specific, funny enough, I think you mentioned what does success look like for certain things, especially for culture. I think as it comes to like social, it's defining what success looks like there, right? Especially as it adheres to subcultures, right? Is it engagement, right? Do we want people sharing it, posting it? Because it's not like it's not a direct link like people are going to go and buy whatever from whatever we just posted, but we're trying to push and engage in culture, not necessarily fully dictate culture and this is what it's going to be. We want to help move culture, not lead it, because I don't think that is our place to be. But I think it's okay for us to move culture and put highlights on it to bring things to the surface level. Something I really have loved in the last year is in the last couple of years, but like K-pop has taken such a big lead on, on music, which has been kind of refreshing for me. Like I'm like, wow, like I never really listened to K-pop, but like I know a good beat when I hear one. So like for me, that is great. And now it's no longer a subculture anymore, but for some time it was. So I think it's really interesting on what we ultimately can do when we back subculture properly.
For sure. I mean, that's the thing about culture. That's the thing about the reason for this podcast. It's like this is what people actually surround themselves around. It's where they connect. It's where they have conversation. It's where they make decisions.
Yeah.
And the decision that you want them to make is totally dependent on the decisions you make on what you communicate. So from a social standpoint, because I've had social in plenty of my titles for long enough, and I don't want to put you on the spot here.
I love the spot.
But from what you were saying, it sounds like social media should not be treated like old school out of home.
Thank you. There we go. He said it. And I'm going to re-emphasize that social should not be used as a form of out of home or anything like that.
Talk about the difference between the two.
So out of home, again, billboards, we are sending a direct message, right? There is an image, there is a message. It is very clear on what the indication is meant for you to do and what we want from you. However, social media allows us to have an equal opportunity to communicate both ways. It allows us to put something out there and for people to react to it, tell us what they want, what they're thinking and what they're feeling. It would be so limiting if we didn't listen, right? Like, I think at some point, you have to forge ahead on certain things, but we are now allowed to not only be in the conversation, but also contribute to it in a way that is meaningful for those around us. So I think that we need to treat it as such. We need to make sure that we are authentically engaging in, if we are going to do in subcultures, we have to do it with the right partners who help establish our authority to be in that space. So I think a big part of that's why social is it's a little tricky. You're trying to establish a brand voice, but it's not about sales. It's a little bit of vibes and a little bit of like strategic showing up in certain places in the right time, in the right moments. So it definitely is a balance on how do we do that in a way that grows and expand a business. And that's just for any business, big, small, medium, but.
Yeah. And speaking of vibes, I do want to touch on something a little bit because I think we're going to have a good chance to talk about it later on Deconstructed, which is the bonus podcast for our Patreon members, our paid Patreon members.
Ooh.
But what happens, and we have a couple of examples, what happens when something that's cultural or directly a part of a subculture, and I mean subculture in the fact that culture is this whole large thing, right? That's made up of many different subcultures of different sizes, of sizes that expand and contract, right? What happens when that becomes a campaign? And during our pre-production meeting, we had two examples that I think we should introduce quickly and have a little bit of conversation about, and then we can talk about it way more. I want to start with the Kardashian one. So what is now Skims?
Oh, yes. Yes. It was originally kimono.
Oh.
Right. Hold. We have another one, please.
Oh, and this is the one I know that you and I for sure are going to get into. So kimono is pretty bad. No, actually, it's very bad. Let me not even take away. It's very bad.
That's bad.
But there were two ex-Googlers, right? They had this great idea of, not to minimize it, but to easily explain it, vending machines with a bunch of different things for apartment buildings. What do you think they called it?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Just say it quickly.
I want to know if I want to
No,
know.
I don't even. No. I don't want no parts.
Just
But
say it,
tell me,
just say
tell
it
me.
quickly, Gary.
They called it bodega. Yeah. Now, these are two examples of what goes wrong when you try to take something that is fully embedded in culture and try to either commodify it or just leverage it or really colonize it, because you're taking all the meaning away from it, or all the historical meaning and feeling and everything else out of it.
And replacing it with, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. So that whole idea of kind of chasing or finding the cool and just staying there without depth is one of those things that is absolutely performative. One of those things that gets you in trouble.
Right.
One of those things that we hope you didn't really think about. Not that that makes it any better. You can actually argue whether it makes it better or worse, whether you didn't think or you didn't know.
Right.
Because in business, you should be thinking about things way more deeply than that anyway, because money is connected to this. But these are the type of mistakes that, especially now, can do a lot of damage for your business, your personal brand, etc. And the reason to bring these up is more of just a caution. The idea of thinking things through, moving a little bit slower, understanding that people are looking to spend their money ultimately on things that they find meaning in, things where they can link their identity. These are human traits that do not change, which is part of the reason why culture is so important to business.
Right.
And just the thoughts and the approach, the thinking about building all these businesses has to consider that, or else you're looking to fail in a way.
Right.
And the one other thing that I wanted to add to this, because I am a champion of research,
Boop.
both of those names, bodega and kimono, they could have caught that in testing.
Yeah.
Under a circumstance that is NDA, and there still could be potentially leaks and things that get out. But like, it's worthwhile, people, everyone out there. Is this thing on? Primary research still matters. Right. Yes, we know that we can talk to people on social and we can get immediate feedback, but do you really want to just put that out there like that? And there's a certain amount of care that has to be considered for the culture or the subculture that brands are trying to connect with, but also for your own brand. And to manage risk and long-term impact, as Gary suggested. There's something about going back to the fundamentals that I don't want us to lose in this AI age. I will continue to say it. A primary research activity that could have been a little survey, a little focus group with the NDA, signature could have gotten that feedback, particularly when you go and think about who is the audience you really want to capture. Because some of these brands are getting savvy and smart and starting to understand more. I know Gary's working on this, but starting to understand more, not just who's buying, but who's influencing the buy.
Right.
And so there are groups and subcultures that will influence that buy. So they have outsized impact on, the outcome of revenue, et cetera. And so it's like, let's just test it with them. Like they're kind of the leaders, or what we might call an early adopter. Right?
Ooh.
They're the leaders. They're the early adopters. Let's test this with them.
Right.
Closed door, NDAs. Let's just see, because we're tapping in for the first time, and let's find out. But I think what we've talked about thus far is there are people that will come up with an idea and they'll say, oh, this is cool. It's like this, without thinking through. Like, not just if it's cool to you, but is it going to be cool to the people that you're trying to connect with?
Totally. I think that is such an interesting thought. Like, I'm going to be very transparent. I feel like I went through a lot of my life. Like, I think as I grew up, once I left my town, and I grew up in a town, it was like 95% Latino. Like we grew up, it was a lower income town. And I remember once I left that, I was very envious and angry at the people who didn't have that experience, and they had it much easier. So at first, when people would make ideas, I would, like calling it the La Bodega, I would get so like angry. And at first I just would see red, and it wasn't really constructive. But now I've learned to use that as a guiding beep, 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 beep. Okay, this is not right. Instead of being emotional and reactive to the things that doesn't feel good to me, I'm like, okay, I don't need to react, but how do I take this? Like, something is not right. How do I give this person constructive feedback in a way that's not like, oh, you're just a racist, that is like, okay, hey, listen, let's unpack this. Tell me why you thought bodegas were a good thing to name it, right? Tell me why you thought that. What was the inspiration? Okay, if the inspiration was tapping into like local bodegas and their support and the things you need, cool. How can we tie it back to them? Can we leverage corner stores to be the ones who fill those vending machines, right? Are those the people who are constantly coming in and filling up the bodega vending machines, and they're getting a slice of whatever is? So there is that connection back to community, back to culture. So I think for me, what I've learned is that like keeping those my internal radar to knowing what's good and not good, and allowing that to help inform other folks on how to push ideas and how to bring it back to community. When you see some like thoughtless things like that, I think it's important to break down those conversations and be like, but baby, why you thought that was okay? But in the most kind and loving way. And I feel like I've really relearned how to approach in kindness and love instead of just reactionary anger. Be like,
right. And that's so important. And it's extra work.
Yeah.
If you're in the know, right?
Boop.
But if you happen to find yourself not in the know, you would want that.
Right.
That kind of feedback. And also, you open up a permission structure for them to carry that forward. Now, when something doesn't feel right, or if it feels a little icky, now they have a language structure to be able to use to talk about that. Now, because you gave them that kindness and also awareness, now they have the ability to, okay, let me make a note of that. So now I know how to structure that kind of feedback. Now I know how to challenge without worrying about whether I'm going to get my head bit off or whatever. So I think that that's also important. Like when we think about kindness and how we give feedback, we're also teaching people how they can carry that forward.
Right.
Yeah, and it's also still that balance there. It's just because I can hear the internet talking right now, and the point that you brought up, Amber, about how much extra work that is, and there is a real fatigue around the extra work that we shouldn't have to do.
Yeah,
and that there is so much truth about that. But once again, it's about finding that balance,
Right.
because if you are trying to open the door for a relationship, you're saying, okay, here's one. If you come back crazy to me again,
Right. And
now things change.
right. Well, I'm in the creative side, so usually I mean this to my creatives, right? Other people, I think it's also on reserve on who you do that for, right? Like it's not for everybody. Like I'm glad you brought that up, because that's sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna let you present this. I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you get chewed out because I try, but you'll know internally who deserves the smoke and who don't. Like you know when that is appropriate and when it's not appropriate. Like there are a few people I'm like, may the bridges I burn light my way, because like you know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
hilarious.
Like
may the bridges I burn light my way.
Right, because there are some folks who just don't deserve it. It's lost on my mind, but there's a quote that is like, there are people who are ignorant and let them stay ignorant. Like it's not my job to step in and teach them, but there are people whose heart is in the right place, but they just like, baby, no, come in here, right? There's a difference between calling out and calling in, and you have to know in your life who you call in and who you bring into your little world to be like, hey, baby, listen, you can't say that. And the people that I've been very fortunate for, I don't do that for everybody, but the people that I have done that for, have been grateful and kind and have paid it forward and helped create spaces. And those are the people you invest the time in. But I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap it back up so we can get to Decoded, so we can get further into this conversation, there was something I saw today on LinkedIn, something that Jade Powell said. And she was talking about the privilege of authenticity. And I think that is very much connected to the conversation that we were having today, because there is a privilege of being authentic, or where you can be authentic. And some cultures welcome that, some don't. You have to know where everything fits.
Right.
So with that said, we are going to wrap up this main episode of the Cultural Subcultures. I want to thank everyone for being here to listen or watch. I want to, of course, thank our illustrious guest, Danny, right here. Thank you so much for being here. And, we will be doing Decoded. Once again, this is the time where you like, share, subscribe, give us a review. If you gave us a review already, give us another one. Give us more reviews.
Yes.
Reach out. Talk to us. This is an open forum. This is the place where you can ask questions, and we will, as long as you ask them respectfully, we will answer with kindness and grace. And not too much sarcasm, because I'm still a New Yorker. But we're here for
I'm a Southern girl. I give you a little honey.
Yes.
I'm New York, baby. Don't ask me. I'm just kidding.
But once again, thank you. And until next time, we will see you then.